enjoy.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. From protesting to solution strategies for our nation, liberating leadership conversations. We are so very honored tonight to have my good friend and brother for over about 44 years, the Reverend Dr. DeForest Buster Soaries, the senior pastor of, yes, sir.
So people,
Oh, they're just coming in. I'm sorry.
Moment to come in, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, come on through, family. Come on through. We're on Instagram Live. Come on through. God bless you. I see the hands. And God bless you. Good evening. Thank you. Come on in, Facebook family. We're so glad to have you. Thank you, Deacon. God bless you. God bless you. Come on in and let your friends know that you're on tonight. You will not want to miss this, particularly if you are a church leader, if you are a pastor, a bishop, if you have any kind of social justice platform, you will certainly want to be a part of this conversation tonight. We have a legend. We have someone who's been doing this all of his life, and you'll want to be a part of this. Welcome, Instagram Live family. We're on StreamYard on Facebook Live, but you'll be able to hear us on Instagram Live, but you'll be able to see us fully on Facebook Live, StreamYard.com, and join us. We're very glad to have you. Thank you. God bless you, Auntie Barbara, and others of you. Thank you. I got the message that you're on, but don't want to be acknowledged. All right. We're glad to have you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. You can't run but so much, bro. You can run, but you can't hide. So sooner or later, she gonna know you somewhere. So be careful. I'm teasing you. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Come on in. Good evening. Good evening. We'll just do this for another 35 seconds. Thank you so much. Invite your friends to join us this evening. We're glad to have you. Come on through. Hello, Pastor Douglas Williams of the Zion Hill Baptist Church in Newark. Glad to have you. Good evening. God bless you. Good evening. Good evening. Hey, Makisha. How are you, precious? Bless you, Elder. Bless you. Bless you. Come on through. Bless you, Sister Copeland, Brother Copeland. God bless you. Bless you, Brenda Harris, with your new transplanted heart. You go ahead on and live on anyhow. Bless you, Sister Portee and the family. Tell Chris to come on tonight. Christopher Michael, your son. God bless you, Eric Parker. Bless you. Bless you, Teddy Elias. Bless you. Bless you all. My friends. Bless you. Teddy's been with me. Teddy and I were friends since we were in 7th grade. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Come on through. Come on through. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Stefan, I think that is you. Bless you. Bless you. Good evening. God bless you. God bless. Love to your family, Sharon and everybody. God bless you. God bless you. The Johnsons, Jacksons, bless you all. Bless you all. Bless you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is 9:03 Eastern Standard Time, and we are in Liberating Leadership Conversations from Protesting to Solution Strategies for Our Nation. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. You are certainly in for a treat. But before I introduce our very special guest tonight, I want to say thank you so very much to Brother Lloyd Edward Vaughn Jr., who is our technological engineer.
Yes.
Lloyd is a phenomenal servant, and Lloyd was taping me at the church today for Sunday. He was doing that, and then he's got so many different clients and what have you. So I certainly appreciate his hand in this. As you know, Lloyd's been in my life since he was 8 years old, and we're grateful for his wife and his children. His wife is just about to get her doctorate degree in education, and just got a wonderful job at Princeton, and we congratulate her and what they're doing, and we're so very proud. Thank you, Lloyd, for what you do, and thank you so very much for being a part of this. Dr. Soaries tonight is our guest. This is day 100. This is the 100th day of us doing this consecutively every night, with the exception of 4 nights, 3 nights, of which I just had to get some rest. And then 2 other nights that I had Pastor Amir Ballard from our Asbury Park campus. He filled in, did a phenomenal job. And then my wife filled in Saturday. She did a phenomenal job. Now, we started this 100 days ago, talking about COVID-19, this pandemic, trying to offer hope, encouragement, and inspiration. We thought it would just be 1 or 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 nights. And here we are in this 100th day. And then 28 days ago, we watched the murder of George Floyd. And so we added our conversations, weren't just COVID related, but they were justice related. And we kind of merged the two platforms. So tonight is our 28th day of talking justice and our 100th day of dealing with the COVID pandemic. My very, very special guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. DeForest Buster Soaries, the eminent senior pastor of the First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens, and we are Somerset, New Jersey, a graduate of Fordham University, of Princeton Theological Seminary, and United Theological Seminary, where he received his doctorate of ministry. Married to Donna with 2 boys, my godsons, Malcolm and Martin. We are grateful for his leadership down through the years. A lot of people call themselves legends, and it's not the truth. But Soaries has been doing this professionally since he was in his early 20s. And ironically, even though he grew up in Montclair, he's just a few years older than me, and I grew up in East Orange. His high school career and my high school career, with the exception of being a basketball star, he dealt with leadership on so many platforms. And so both of us led student councils. We led protests in high school, led Black Studies clubs and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm just very glad and almost really excited to have him as our guest tonight. I want to welcome you, Dr. Soaries. Thank you for joining with me tonight.
God bless you, Dr. Hilliard. It's an honor to be with a friend. This is my 3rd live stream today, and I'm about sick of streaming. But you are my friend.
Yes.
I've heard from people now. People, you get new friends when the climate shifts and when circumstances change, and friends come and go. But there are a few people that are lifelong friends, and you're one of them. And so I thank you for remaining my friend. I'm not an easy person to have as a friend. So thank you for tolerating me all these years.
Thank you. I don't agree, but thank you. I think I love Buster because he just tells the truth, and whether you like it or not. The other thing, my daughter and I were talking. I said, Uncle Buster's going to be on tonight, and she said, "Well, I can tell you one thing: it's going to be good, but it's not going to be as long as some other nights were." I said, "No, it won't be, because what it takes other folk 5 minutes to say, it takes him 2 minutes to say." And then Leah said, but you understand everything he was trying to say in 2 minutes instead of 5. So we were talking about you today. I want you to kind of guide us and give us some conversation in regards to some areas I'm just going to lift up to you. Each night we have been dealing with issues of the health pandemic, this economic pandemic, and this justice pandemic. You have historically been known as a civil rights advocate, a civil rights worker, working with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I want you to, I just lost my questions here. Thank you. Give me 1 second, Doc. I don't want to lose my train of thought. That's the other thing. I got so many note areas because I'm on so many of these panels as well. Thank you. So talk to me and talk to us a little bit about the difference from your perspective of what we saw in the 60s and the marching that we saw. And this march, this feels different.
Yeah.
It first of all, it's worldwide. It has touched the entire world. Kind of talk to me about the difference. What makes this different than what we went through in the 60s?
Yeah. Thank you, Donald. You know, first of all, let's talk about the similarities. It was 1957, 1955, when the Montgomery bus boycott was sparked by Rosa Parks and led by Dr. King. And in 1955, for over 380 days, Black people boycotted the bus lines, and it got national attention, and they won. But it didn't really capture the imagination of the country. In 1960, students began sitting in North Carolina to desegregate lunch counters, and it got some attention, but it didn't capture the imagination of the whole country. It wasn't until 1963 that the civil rights protests captured the attention of the country, because school children were marching to protest, and women, and Bull Connor, the police commissioner, used fire hoses. Now, fire hoses, for those who don't know the danger of fire hose, the fire hoses that Bull Connor used were strong enough to literally peel the skin off your arm. They could separate bricks from their mortar. So these were strong fire hoses. And if you recall, they actually were forceful enough to drive people down the street. And then German Shepherds. And what happened was national television showed that. Now, the whole country knew about segregation and people knew about protests. But something happened in 1963, Birmingham, Alabama, where Fred Shuttlesworth invited Dr. King into town. Dr. King went to jail. They filled up the jails. They had no more room in the jails. And they filled the jails in large measure with children. And that's when the White House, sensing the sentiment of the country, said, this has got to stop. And so in 1964, as a direct consequence of that Birmingham movement, 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. 1968, right after Dr. King was killed, the Fair Housing Act was passed. And so this was a catalytic moment, aided by television and seen by the whole nation. And so on May 31st, while the country generally had either heard about police brutality or had some inkling that it was true, on May 31st, when that 17-year-old child recorded that Minneapolis police officer with his knee on the neck of George Floyd. For 6 minutes, George Floyd cried out, "I can't breathe." He called his mother. And then after 6 minutes, another officer said, he doesn't have a pulse. And the officer with the knee on the neck kept his knee on the neck for another 3 minutes. The average white person in America prior to that really believed that Black people need not be concerned about the police unless they do something wrong. The average. In fact, surveys say that 25% of the white people in America believe that Black people were mistreated by the police. 75% believe that it was just in our imaginations. But when they saw that videotape and they kept playing it over and over and over on every news station, even Fox News said, "My God, this is terrible." It created a similar kind of dynamic in the country, except this time, a whole generation of young white people had grown up believing that America was America. You had a whole generation of white children who grew up, whose parents grew up watching Bill Cosby on TV, whose favorite athlete is LeBron James and Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. You know, white people cried when Kobe Bryant died, who listened to hip hop and buy more hip hop than Black people. So you have this whole generation of young white people who are now shocked because they never dreamt that they thought Al Sharpton and guys like that were just ambulance chasers and making a big deal out of nothing. So now remember, this happens right on the heels of being locked in your house for 2 months. You know, COVID-19 happened, but COVID-19 was affecting more Black people than white people proportionately. And this outpouring of rage and protest occurred. And in 2,000 cities across America, there were protests, and the protests were using the slogan that had been used when Eric Garner had been killed, I can't breathe, Black Lives Matter. So this was different because it wasn't isolated. It wasn't just Black protest, and young white people began to march, and then people around the world were marching, France and England and Germany. I knew something was different when I heard that white Mormons in Salt Lake City, Utah, were marching with signs that said Black Lives Matter. You know, when have white Mormons ever marched for Black concerns? So it was a pent up demand, as it were, for righteous indignation concerning a problem that we have always known. All Black families have raised their children to go extra polite when the police stop you. And I think the George Floyd murder, it just resonated, and it was just graphic. And the cop had a smirk on his face, his hand in his pocket, and his knee on the neck. And it just violated all the sensibilities of white people. And it just confirmed all of the anxiety of Black people.
I had a question here that it says, talk to me about the creative bounce back that we find in the historic African American church, particularly in light of all that you took us right on back to 1965.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say too is that what we need to hear more of in this boycotting, or we need to hear more of in all of this protesting, is it was a 380-day boycott.
Right, in Montgomery.
I don't think we recognize that this, I know we don't want to take the time, and some things shouldn't take time, but it's going to be more than just it's going to take some time.
Yeah, that to your original question, that's really there are qualitative differences between the marches of the 60s and this protest. While that similarity is a strong similarity, let me just point out some of them. Number one, we had identifiable, strong leadership in the 60s. And so, and you need that because, for instance, one of the weaknesses of these demonstrations has been their inability to distinguish themselves from the looters and the rioters. So you have people who really want to do peaceful protest in the tradition of nonviolent struggle, but they were easily manipulated and infiltrated by outside forces because they didn't have the leadership and the strategic IQ to know what to do. You see, in the 60s, when Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, April 4th, 1968, that was his second trip to Memphis. The first time he went to Memphis, there were rabble-rousers, rioters, and looters who were breaking windows and smashing stores downtown, and King and the leadership left town. Now, he was criticized for it, but he was able to distinguish their protests from the rioters. And when he went back to Memphis the second time, he went with some extra help, namely Jesse Jackson. He took Jesse with him because Jesse's job was to deal with the rabble-rousers. Since Jesse had a lot of rabble in him, he was like he was a strategic weapon. That's why he was in Memphis. But today, the spontaneity of these marches is admirable, but it's also dangerous because there's really no leadership. And when you're in a struggle and you have multifaceted opposition, you need leadership. The second thing was discipline. Nonviolent protest requires discipline. And this idea that it's heroic to curse at the police, spit in their face, take a selfie, and act like you've done something significant is counterproductive. In the 60s, when we had marches, we had training sessions, physical training sessions. We practiced having people call us names. We were disciplined. There was a discipline to the point where when one person prayed, everybody prayed. We didn't take a knee to protest. We took a knee to humbly bow before the throne of grace. So we had a strategy. The strategy was to protest so that the leadership could negotiate, and when the negotiations were over, we stopped the protest. My concern about this protest is that because there's so few tangible goals and so little identifiable leadership, when does it end? Who has the authority to say, okay, we're done, or we won? And that's one of the dangers of spontaneous protest with no leadership, no discipline, and no articulable goals.
And I appreciate you saying that. And you're not saying that you're not with the people, because that's the other thing that came up in these conversations this week about, them wanting to be them wanting to be free agents and don't want to be harnessed. They want to be heard, and I hear them. But as I said last night, we need the old and the young together, because the older wise, the younger strong, and you need the old and the young together. Because somebody kept saying that they want to be heard, they want to be at the table, and without conformity. That kept coming up, without conformity. At some point, there's got to be some kind of, a conformity to something. One of the things different about this marching this time is that there doesn't seem to be a this march is certainly not a moral compass. God is not the moral compass. Everybody's marching now. Buddhists and Jews and agnostics and atheists. The witches were even marching. They had a line for the witches, the COVID, Coven. They were marching also. I think that it behooves us. You talked about leadership, discipline, strategy. And God bless Elder Olson just jumped on here and he put strategy with 3 exclamation points right after strategy, because strategy is important for every platform. And strategy also must not only be spoken, but strategy must be heard and it must be adhered to.
Right.
I want you to talk to me now about, this is something that concerns me. You talked about no strategy, discipline. It's got to be more than just taking a knee. Everybody prayed, and all of that's true. Are you concerned about white backlash?
I just posted an article on Twitter that describes 3 white law enforcement officers who accidentally recorded themselves in their police car talking about their willingness and almost their desire to kill Black people. They didn't know they were being recorded. Somebody hit a button by accident. And that conversation, I think, reflects the sentiment of backlash. And so, yes, I am concerned. We have been the victims of tremendous backlash ever since we got here. There have always been people that have wanted us to either settle for what we have or wait for what we want. And I am concerned, but that brings us back, Doctor, to this conversation about discipline, because while you can't control backlash, you can be disciplined enough to have a strategy that can deal with it better. See, when you're at random and when you're impulsive and when you're spontaneous, you know, you're not covered. And that's what organization does. That's what strategy does. It anticipates backlash, and you have a strategy even for the backlash. So I just, you know, I'm just worried about some of the young people who just want to be heard and want to be active towards no measurable outcome, because you can't protest all of your life. And at some point, you know, you've got to meet people halfway. Dr. King's philosophy of nonviolence included negotiation and reconciliation, because the other side of it is that true victory comes when we reconcile and we move past this particular point in history. Suppose I told some young people a couple of weeks ago, suppose you bumped into some of your friends and they said, why don't you come on with us? And said, well, where are we going? And they said, well, we're going downtown New Brunswick to protest the restaurant because they won't let Black people eat there. Well, who would go protest a restaurant when we've won that battle, right? We won that battle. There's no more protest for the right to eat in a restaurant, because if you have the money, you can go. That was 50 years ago, and we won. There's certain victories that you want, so that 5, 10, 15 years from now, we want protesting police brutality to be just as rare as protesting eating at the lunch counter. It was normal then. We shut it down. But you can't win if you don't define what victory looks like. And at some point, I mean, defunding the police, you know, one of our friends in California was in the Washington Post yesterday talking about what happened to his city when they tried to defund the police. Crime went up. He said, Black people need the police. You know, Black folks will call the police in a heartbeat. So you have to have concrete goals. I listed 7 goals early on. I really wrote them down to give to the activists to say, listen, if you want to fight for something and know what that something looks like, here, take these suggestions and use them in your protest.
And the Congressional Black Caucus is interested in those, in adopting some of those goals?
They've taken up, I talked, for instance, about having a national database of police officers. You know, you can be fired in Perth Amboy for abusing your authority and go over to New Brunswick and get a job on the New Brunswick Police Department, and the people of Perth Amboy aren't required to even tell New Brunswick what happened. So we need a national database, just like we have for child molestation. If you molest a child in Georgia and move to New York, your record follows you. And if you abuse your authority in New Jersey and move to Texas as a police officer, your record should follow you. I talked about training, psychological training and other kinds of training for police officers. Talked about giving incentives to police officers to intervene and to break the blue wall of silence. I talked about doing best practices where we find the communities where we have good police community relations, and then have federal resources available to teach other communities how to behave that way. So, you know, just concrete things you can get on a local, county, state, and federal level, so that you know what you're fighting for and you know when it's okay to pack up your bags and go back home. You know, you remember the, I think they called it, what did they call it? Occupy Wall Street.
Right.
See, that was a big movement that just fizzled.
Yes.
Just fizzled. I mean, one day there were people sleeping all over the ground and in the banks, and then they just went away. And no one today can point to anything concrete that came out of Occupy Wall Street. We don't want that to happen with the Black Lives Matter protest.
So what would you say is one major thing that the Black Lives Matter platform is, you know, one underlying exclamation point that We know there are several, but from your perspective, what do you feel may be one of the most important things that we need to adhere to?
Well, their major platform formally is defund the police.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't agree with this language, but I will tell you this. What's true in social movements is that you often need a vanguard or, you know, the most militant or active remnant to ask for more than is reasonable so that the fallback position gets you further than you probably would have gotten.
I see.
So what's going to happen, I believe, is that this thing, every time somebody says Black Lives Matter, they are de facto endorsing the proposition of defunding the police. And I think what's going to happen, and it started, for instance, in Newark, we're not going to completely defund the police, but in New York, the mayor said there is $1 billion in their budget that we could reallocate to people who are dealing with homeless people and people who have mental challenges, because a lot of the interaction with the homeless and with people who have mental challenges is being executed by police who are not qualified to do that. So I do think there's going to be a disbursement of funds so that policing will be redefined and not completely defunded. But I think the Black Lives Matter movement, having that as their platform, is going to resonate and make an impact.
Have you ever thought about possibly having a coffee conversation, sitting across the table, kind of thing?
You mean with whom?
With these young, eager, spontaneous, up and coming social activists to kind of help guide.
Yeah. In fact, I've talked to two already, and I'm meeting with one tomorrow afternoon, and that's going to be my offer. My offer is to have kind of a roundtable conversation with them asking me questions, me asking them questions, and to see if there's some way we can bridge the gap and without stifling their energy and creativity, give them access to our experience. You know, you had a friend. I remember this just now. You had a friend in East Orange who was killed by the East Orange police.
Derek Brett Humphrey.
And I led the protest.
Yes, you did.
In East Orange. And I didn't find out till years later that he was your friend. And we had a
July
black mayor.
15th, 1975.
1975. And we had a black mayor, Bill Hart. We had a black police commission. We had a black city council, and we had to protest because the system was such that this white cop who shot this black kid was functionally being protected by black politicians. We finally got him put in jail, and he's out of jail now. That's why I always look over my shoulder when I'm somewhere. But he was one of many cops. But the point is, after he was arrested and went to jail, we formed a citizens commission, had public hearings. We studied the police manual. We introduced changes as community organizations. And so this kind of experience, you know, gives us some capital that we can share with young activists today that they can use.
And any on the line, I would encourage us to be a part of that. And, you know, maybe that's something that, you know, I'd love to be a part. I'm still thinking about the time we hosted the governor. The two of our churches came together in this big service, and we got behind the governor, and then
McGreevy, right?
Yeah, McGree. No, we go back to Florio.
Was it Florio?
It was
Florio. All I know is whoever we backed lost.
Yeah, and we really had some tremendous history. You know, I wonder you know, we were very young, but we had Sam Proctor, and we had persons that we wanted to listen to, and I'm all for young people, and I want them to lead, I want them to go forward, but I often wonder, have we do they want to hear us? Not that we're the savior, but I think we can be a help.
Yeah, well, we'll see. My sense is that they do, but they're not sure how to get us to their table, and they're not sure they're welcome at our table. I think the onus is on us to reach out to them as best we can, and that's what I've tried to do. I know you tried to do it. You've been doing it for years. You know, stop the funerals and this and that. You always have something with a theme, and we just have to keep trying.
Okay.
Keep trying.
And in light of that, my last 2 points here. Talk to me about as a Black preacher, trained in the tradition of Samuel DeWitt Proctor. I'm rereading his book in these times. This The Substance of Things Hoped For. I'm rereading that book. Help us understand the Black church and the gospel of bounce back. One of the things that I find is very unique in this hour now, I was in the Perth Amboy March. It was wonderful, over 1,000 people. And these young people were, they were on fire. They were just young, little young child, just about 18. She was about my youngest daughter's age, and she was the one that was, going forward. And it was very inspiring looking at her. But I said to myself, and I understand we're in a very pluralistic society. One doctor's Muslim, one doctor's Buddhist, one doctor's atheist, one doctor's Christian. But there is something to be said of the bounce back gospel that is preached in the Black church that I think we really need in this hour.
Well, what has made the Black church so powerful, and Dr. Proctor would always talk to us about this, is that we always saw Jesus in both spiritual and social terms. What a lot of our people don't realize is that evangelicalism at its core attempts to avoid the social aspect of Jesus and only focus on the spiritual aspect. Whereas the Black church never got caught up in that either or.
Right.
Jesus has always been both and. And so we saw Jesus as the one who heals the sick, who feeds the hungry, and who advocates for the poor, and also the Jesus that calls us from sin to salvation and offers us everlasting life. But Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full, have it more abundantly, life now. So this bounce back, the concept of bounce back is rooted in the reality of resurrection. Next year is the 100th anniversary of the race riot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This race riot was the worst in the history of our country, where a mob of white people killed 300 Black people, burned down 600 Black businesses, inclusive of a Black-owned hotel, Black restaurants. 6 Black men in Tulsa in 1921 owned their own private planes. I mean, Black people were living large in Tulsa. It irritated white people to the point of invoking violence. That was the day after, it was an 18-hour rampage. The National Guard had to put the remaining Black people in a stadium to protect them from the white mobs. One day after that happened, the AME church that had been almost burnt down had people gathered. They had worship in that old AME building where most of it had been destroyed, but they came together to worship God because we have believed intensely in the God of the resurrection.
Yes, sir.
And the Jesus of the joy in the morning. And so
Yes.
that's our message. Our message does not stop with Black Lives Matter. Our message stops with joy comes in the morning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's been the message of the church. That's been the hope of people all the way from slavery up until now. And that's the power. And see, that's another difference. This protest is generally not rooted in spirituality.
Right.
And now everybody doesn't have to be Baptist, everybody doesn't have to be Pentecostal, but justice is a spiritual principle guaranteed by God. But justice is identical twins with righteousness. The Greek word for justice and the Greek word for righteousness is the same word.
Yes.
And the Hebrew word for justice and righteousness are the same word. So when you see justice in the Bible, in Psalm 89, the Bible talks about justice and righteousness being the foundation for God.
Yes.
The prophet said, let justice roll like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Mighty stream.
And Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for
Yes.
there will be the kingdom of God. So this social protest without any emphasis on righteousness is going to be less capable of producing justice.
Somebody say yes right here. I want to thank you, Dr. Soaries, today. I want to thank you. I think, you know, I had my last point here was the, we talked about the white backlash. You referred to in some of your sermons, the same thing I'm aware of is the shoebox.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Would you end with that story, sir, please?
Yeah, I will, because what I do want to slip in here is that my latest book is called Say Yes When Life Says No.
Yes.
And you've seen the introduction to that. And I quote you in that book. You know, we are the people, my family, as you know, was from Virginia. My mother's mother came here with the rich white family that she worked for. Now, she was not a slave, but this was right after slavery. And a lot of the people in New Jersey, black people came here in enclaves with the white people that brought them from the South. So that's how my family got to New Jersey. But my grandmother's family was still in Virginia. And every time she would go to Virginia from Montclair to a family reunion or family funeral or any other kind of family event, I always saw her get in the car with a shoebox. I never knew what was in the shoebox until one day I peeked inside and saw a piece of fried chicken in between two pieces of white bread.
White bread.
And I didn't understand it. And she explained to me that we can't stop and eat in the restaurants between New Jersey and Virginia. So we pack our lunch in the shoebox.
Yes.
And that is my grandmother. So for people who think we're that far removed, just know that you and I grew up in homes where people had been treated just as badly as these TV shows and what it looks like back in the day. And I thank God every time I travel and go to a restaurant that I've never had to eat my lunch out of a shoebox, because people protested with clarity, with dignity, with discipline, and with goals. And they won. And thank God. We got some problems, but it doesn't include me having to eat chicken sandwiches out of shoeboxes.
Well, Doc, I remember going. I forgot your people were from Virginia. My mother's people are from Virginia, and we would go down to Virginia every single summer. And I do remember in the early, maybe to about 64, after my sister was born, I remember my grandmother. She would ride with us, and Grandma would pack a shoebox and fried chicken and white bread wrapped in not aluminum foil, wrapped in waxed paper.
Wax paper.
Yeah, with a mason jar of lemonade.
Lemonade with the top screwed on tight. Right.
Yes, sir. And I'm grateful for that. And I will end on these two words. You said dignity and discipline.
Right.
I want to encourage us. You know, you can never, ever go wrong when you walk with dignity and discipline. And I'm so glad. And I want to honor your late father, my late mother and late father, and your living mother for putting that discipline and dignity and Reverend Choice and You came up under your father's ministry,
Right.
but they put something in us
Right.
that made us try to talk a little better and made sure our shoes were shined and, you know, made sure that the table was set for Sunday dinner. There was something that they put in us that racism could not beat out of us.
Right. Yeah. Excellence was revolution.
Yes, sir.
And the way we fought back against racism was to prove them wrong.
Yes, sir.
They thought we were ignorant, prove them wrong.
Right.
They said we were lazy, prove them wrong. They said we never be anything, prove them wrong. And so we were raised in an atmosphere where the way you fought back was by being excellent and proving the racist wrong.
Yes, sir. Well, I can't believe that we have talked until 9:46. I thought you at 9:20. I thought you were going to say, Hilliard, thank you, love you, God bless you, I'm out. But thank you, Dr. Soaries. This has been outstanding, and I want you all, as I have been doing each night. This is not revival, it's not convocation, but it is a conversational conference, and I certainly want to make sure I sow a seed into the lives of my guests. I'm going to ask that you follow the instructions at the bottom and make sure that you can sow a seed tonight. As we also close tonight, we are mindful that there are over 40 million people who have lost their jobs.
Right.
And we are mindful of that. And that'll be another conversation on, you know, how does the church, you know, go forward in light of that, that reality. I want to leave you with this scripture, verse 8 of 2 Corinthians and the 4th chapter. We are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. I want to remind you that the race is not given to the swift, neither to the strong, but given to those that endure to the end.
Yes, sir.
God remains our refuge and strength, a very present help in the time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Don't fear, family. Hold on, trust on, pray on. Joy comes in the morning. Thank you again, Dr. Soaries, for being with us tonight.
Phyllis, I see you. God bless you. Reverend.
Yes.
God bless you. I see you.
God bless you. Thank you, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye.